Hi fellow gardeners, welcome to another episode of Garden with Jenny. I'm Jenny. So this is another video, 2 videos in 1 week, holy Moses. I know I was absent for a while and I've had the itch to garden once again. So today in my endeavors I went to a couple of the local nurseries as well as Walmart because seeds are pretty cheap at Walmart. And I picked out some seeds that I maybe want to grow this year. Most of them I can't really start indoors, or if I would start them indoors, they might get leggy on me, which isn't fun. You don't want weak plants. But I wanted to show you what I got, and this is all new because back home in Buffalo, I was using regular fluorescent tube lighting to supply lighting for all of the plants that I had. Whenever I did seeds, they were underneath tube lighting, and I never had them close enough to the plants because of how the setup was in the basement there. So I have a different way to go about it this time, and hopefully, things go great. I went out and bought some seeds as well as some new mix that I want to talk about, and my new setup. So Sean's gonna kill me because now, on top of all the crafting that I like to do, I like to crochet and do art. Now I've bought seed starting stuff. We have a huge it's a computer craft room that has all my art supplies, because I had opened my own Etsy shop back in November to sell some of my crafts. Like scarves and hats and mittens, and I'm getting some ceramics put on there now. I was going to put on some artwork, and I hadn't gotten my artwork on yet, but anyways, that's a side thing. No need to worry about that, because this channel is about gardening, which is what I really, really love more than anything else in this world, is being around plants. And last time I showed you my house plants, along with my cherry tomatoes, my Hungarian wax pepper seeds, and the California Wonder green bell peppers, which all of those 3 I can start indoors somewhere between 6 to 10 weeks before the last frost date, which for this area of the country is usually around Memorial Day, similarly to what Buffalo is, which is good. Because when I moved out west and out in Wyoming, theirs wasn't until like the first week or 2 in June, which was strange. Usually it's the first week in June, which it's not a huge delay, change. It's only a week, but it's still different out there. Like, I would have been afraid to grow some of the vegetables out there because, it's a mountainous area. But in between the mountains is, some of the valleys are more desert climate. So where it would get really, for 3 months out of the year, it would get really hot during the day, but then the temperatures would dip down below 50 at night. So we'd have like 80-degree days, and then it would go down to the 40s. So it was extreme temperature swings, which was a little bit difficult for me learning how to deal with plants out there because, I had to take care of all the annual and perennial beds, all the annual planters. I'm surprised that a lot of those annuals even survived the way they did. Snaps like cooler temperatures, but like the geraniums, it would get down into the 30s, and the geraniums did great for me. I don't know if I ever posted any of the pictures from the job out there, which I probably didn't. I just, I didn't make a slideshow of that and put it on here, which I probably should do. And I probably should have done that last summer while I was working. But for the most part, a lot of the summer, but before July, I was working a lot of hours. I was working 15-hour days sometimes during the week. Nice paycheck, by the way. But anyways, so out there posed a significant challenge to me, and we had anticipated being there more than just last year. We wanted to be there this coming season that's coming up, but things didn't work out the way that we thought they were going to. So now that we're back on the East Coast, I can get my gear going the way I usually do. But out there with the extreme temperature swings, even when I would apply pesticides, they didn't react the same way as they do over here in the Buffalo, Pennsylvania type region. Because plants, for certain pesticides to work effectively, usually you apply them when it's above 50 degrees because then the plants are actively growing. Especially for like systemic pesticides, you know, the plants need to be actively growing for the pesticide to circulate through the system. So Roundup is applied to the foliage of plants. The active ingredient is glyphosate. Goes in through the leaves, goes down to the root, and it's supposed to kill the root. Well, because of the temperature swings out there, being that it would dip down a lot of nights below 50 degrees, the glyphosate was not as fast acting as it usually is over here on the East Coast, where there's warmer temperatures at night during the summer. So that posed a little bit of a challenge because I would apply the pesticides, and my husband has his license, so I was under his supervision, which meant that I didn't need to have my own pesticide license. But I was under his supervision, and he has learned all of the specifics of pesticide usage and all that stuff. So he was having me apply at a rate of 2.5 tablespoons per gallon of water, which is actually 2.5 times what you normally do. You usually do 1 tablespoon. I think it's a tablespoon, or ounce. They're ounces. Sorry, they're ounces. So he was having me do 2.5 ounces per gallon of water. Because when you have your pesticide license, they give you a range. So because you're knowledgeable in how pesticides are properly used, you have the ability to mix a little bit of a stronger strength. So he was having me mix stronger, and it still was not being effective. It was taking weeks for weeds to die, whereas here on the East Coast, you spray Roundup, and usually it's dead the next day. Or if, you know, like for dandelions, which is usually a lot of what I was spraying out there, but it wasn't working as well. So just a little bit of a background about what I was doing out there. This video was not supposed to be about that, but you know, I ramble. So today I want to show you my new setup, what I'm working on, the new seeds that I got today. This setup may not stay here. I was originally going to put it on my kitchen counter, but the tube is actually a little bit bigger than what I wanted, I think, and the stand is actually quite large. So this could potentially be a temporary spot, but anyways, here we go. Let me turn you around. So here's my new setup. This Jumpstart seed tubing thing, grow light stand. That's the words I was looking for. And you can see my nice new seed mat, which I'm in the process of doing a little bit of investigating as to whether I can put my plastic. I've never used a seed mat. I've sold seed mats, but I've never used one myself. So I'm doing a little bit of investigating right now as to whether or not I can put my plastic tray right on top of the seed mat. Because I went out and bought this nice seed set, 72 cell pack mini greenhouse kit, which comes with there's the greenhouse lid in there that you can see, plus the black plastic tray, which I've used these many times when I've done raising of seeds. Did you hear that? Not sprouting of seeds, but not germination of seeds, raising of seeds, because they're my babies. So this is the setup I got here. This is a corner near my house, well, in my house, which is, it's actually the northwest corner of my house. There's a light that's actually above me where I'm sitting. I'm sitting on my carpet right now. So there's a lighting unit above me, plus my new T5 light bulb system, which that's the light on right now. I know that the strings are not, it's not even in the center of the thing. You can tell that it's being anchored towards this side of the unit, and there's this space over here. I have not figured out how to fix that yet. I think it's because of the power cord, because my outlet is right here. So I think that has something to do with it. So I'm interested in trying to use this seed mat, which is supposed to raise soil temperature between 10 to 15 degrees warmer than what the air temperature is. Kind of interesting. So that seed mat is from a local garden center, but it's made by the company Jumpstart. Hydro Farm. Interesting stuff. So it'll be interesting to use. I want to turn this back off so I don't waste electricity. It'll be interesting to use that. So most of what I'm going to be growing indoors is going to be peppers and tomatoes, because most of the other seeds that I had purchased, you can directly sow outside, and I've grown some of them in the house, and they've become extremely leggy for me because I started them way too early. So I showed you my tray system here. So it comes with that clear greenhouse dome type deal. 6 cells per pack for a total of 72 mini greenhouse cell things. So here's a few of the seed packages that I've gotten. So obviously Echinacea is a perennial for this area as well as for New York State, which I'm sure it's a perennial in many other places. So obviously on the back of the seed packet has all the information that you need to know about when to sow, how to space, how to do it. Oh, and this one even has its perennial zones 3 to 10. So that's pretty good. So these would be, it's borderline perennial out in Wyoming where I was. Sometimes you have to get stuff that's hardy to zone 2, which there's like nothing that's hardy to zone 2. But anyways, so these jalapenos I'm going to be starting inside. I just got these today, organic jalapenos from Burpee. 75 days to harvest. So you start these 8, I'll probably start them 10 weeks, like I'll start the California Wonders as well as the Hungarian wax peppers, which would be 10 weeks before you transplant them outside. And Sean likes spicy stuff, and he likes jalapeno peppers, and I love putting jalapenos in tacos or in nachos. They're really delicious, especially when they're fresh. Like when I buy fresh produce instead of the pickled jalapenos, they taste way better. So then I got some peas, which peas you can sow directly outside after danger of frost. Onions you can sow directly outside, and even the yellow summer squash as well as the zucchini squash you can sow directly outside once the frost has dissipated, you know, the danger of frost has gone, which, like I said, is around Memorial Day for Pennsylvania, New York type deal. So I thought I got more. I spent quite a bit of money today, but that's because of my my lighting system that I bought and the seed mat. The seed mat was $30, which seems ridiculous to me, but anyways. And I've never dealt with Jiffy's seed starting mix before, but it had Omri on the front of it, which Omri is an organic listing that's, I believe, government regulated. So on the back it shows you your instructions, which obviously I don't really need any instructions as I know how to plant seeds, and each seed has its own depth that you plant it at, which I'll get into that in a few more minutes. But I'm interested in trying to use this. Now I showed you the peat pellets, the peat pots and pellets that I had gotten from the garden center the last time, which I showed off in the video prior to this, which has plant tone fertilizer in it, which is great. I'm going to probably end up using that with all of these. Not until past the cotyledon phase, so that I'm not burning too young of roots with fertilizer. But this, I don't think this has any kind of fertilizer in it. So this is a 12-quart bag. I don't know anything about this stuff. Instructions for cuttings, instructions for seed starting. It's supposed to be a sterile mix. so that you have less chances of dampening off disease going on. Dampening off disease is when you'll notice your seedlings will go whoop. So at the base of the soil line down here, if my horizontal portion of my fingers here were the soil line, and this pointer finger is the plant, what'll happen is right here where the plant meets the soil line, it'll get mushy. And then down it goes. And that's so disheartening because you work so hard to raise your seedlings to be beautiful little plants, and then to have them poop out like that is just disappointing. I don't know if I've had that happen or not, but usually I can't recall any times where it happened to me, which signifies that the seed starting mix from Hoffman, I think, is a pretty decent seed starting mix. Because that's usually what I use. I use that, or I use back-toe potting mix, which is rather similar because they're peat moss based with perlite in that case. But I don't recall having dampening off disease, and that's usually because the mixes that I use are pre-sterilized, meaning that they're baked or whatever the company does to sterilize the soil medium. It's a soilless medium usually. That way there's no bacteria. Now, I had some potting mix in the basement at my parents' house that I noticed had developed mold on it, and that's because the bag was open and the basement was damp. And I don't know if the chimney leaked in the bag, and then being that the bag was semi-closed, it created kind of a greenhouse effect, and then the mold spores grew from there. I don't know. I'm assuming that's what happened. So I threw all that soil out back home, but or I didn't use that soil after that. I had tried some Organic Mechanics seed starting mix, which I liked the fact that it was organic, but because our basement was so damp, the organic material breaking down in that seed starting mix when it stayed moist, because seedlings need moisture, brought on fungus gnats, and I had them everywhere. And because my stuff was near the sump pump as well as the laundry tub, we had tons of fungus gnats. So I was not going to use Organic Mechanics again, but granted, I probably could have if I would have found it, but I didn't find it when I was looking around today. It has rice hulls in it, which is great. You know, organic material is really great to use, but you have to be careful because when it does get broken, starts to break down, you know, fungus gnats come to feed on organic material that's starting to decompose. So, it makes sense. It's not a problem that the company is causing. It's just a fact of life, which outdoors I wouldn't care so much. You know, if I was using it outdoors all the time for potting mixes and we had fungus gnats outside, it's a different story. But once you introduce fungus gnats into a basement and where there's moisture, they go to the moisture. And you take away the seed starting mix, they're going to go where there's other moisture. And I used to have a lot of people complain to me about other mixes, not just Organic Mechanics, but other seed starting mixes that they kept a little bit on the too moist side. So then that started the breakdown process too. So it's not just Organic Mechanics. It's anything that has any kind of organic material in it that they keep that's consistently moist. It starts to break down, will bring any sort of fungus gnats in. And when they did that, they threw their plants out. And the fungus gnats ended up breeding in their kitchen sink. And they couldn't get rid of them. So I finally had them I had them blast their sink with bleach, and it finally got rid of them all. But what a headache it was for them. So just a little bit of a cautious thing when you use organic material in the house. You want to keep it, I know seeds want to be moist, but you got to be a little bit careful with keeping organic mix consistently moist all the time, because you'll get some sort of fungus gnats going on. ramble. You see that? I just rambled again, guys. So, I can't decide whether or not I want to try and grow the peas and the squash in the house. A lot of these are container friendly. I know both squashes are container friendly, where you put one plant per 12-inch pot. So I might try and start a few in the house and see what happens, and then do some more outside. I haven't gotten any bigger containers other than these cell packs, as well as those peat pots over there. So if I do start them in the house and they start doing really great, I'm going to have to be very mindful of transplanting them in a proper fashion, in a timely manner, instead of just letting them get leggy. Another reason why those plants got leggy when I did them, I think it was 2 years ago, I did seeds. It was either 2 or 3 years ago now. It was the year that I put up that greenhouse. So it was at least 3 years ago. It was probably 4 years ago. It was back when I was doing more videos more often. When I first started YouTube. I had that big plastic greenhouse. And if you take a look back at some of those videos, you'll see pea plants that are spindly looking. It's probably because I grew them indoors under lights, and I didn't keep the lights close enough to the plants. So we had some legginess going on, which is another reason why I got this lighting fixture instead of just doing them over by the south-facing window, because they will reach for the light and become leggy. This way I can keep the light bulb probably, I don't know if I want to start it at 2 inches or if I want to do 4 inches across the board. 4 inches from the top of the plant. That way there's no burning going on. I don't think these T5 lights will cause heat and temperature burning. I hope they're not going to do that. Or else I just wasted money, because I could have just gotten fluorescent tube lights, which would have been cheaper. But, anyways. So we will see how that goes. It's going to be an experiment. It's going to be a process. I'm waiting to see if I can get some information as to whether I can put my plastic tray right on the heating mat. Because I don't want it to melt the tray. That's just ridiculous. So we will see what goes on with that. But definitely within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be getting my pepper seeds in. And get those started. Because if Memorial Day is when you're going to transplant them outside, 10 weeks before that is the middle of March. So here we are on, I believe it's February 26th today. That gives us 2 days left in February. And then, well, hello March. So then another 2 weeks or so. I think 4 weeks in May, 4 weeks in April. Yeah, so halfway through March is 10 weeks. Might even be the first, I might even be able to do it next, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday, because that'll be the 7th of March, and Memorial Day is the last weekend in May, right? So there's usually a couple of days after that in May still, so we might be able to do them next Thursday. We will plan it out and see what goes. I might do it that weekend, because then I could have Sean help me. And that would be fun. So, this was a longer video than last time, but I did quite a bit of talking. Threw quite a bit of information out there. Oh, I know. Before I want to let you go. So, as I said earlier, seeds have different depths to which you plant them at. Most smaller seeds are probably 1/4 inch, because you don't want to do too deep, too much deeper than the actual size of the seed itself. So these jalapeno peppers are 1/4 inch, but they're pretty small seeds. But the summer squash, the zucchini and the yellow squash, have a rather larger seed. So these ones you plant at 1 inch depth underneath the soil line. So when you're reading your seed packages, pay attention to seed depth, spacing for spacing in between plants in a row and then spacing between rows. Pay attention to the height of plants, whether they're going to need staking or not. Tomatoes most likely need staking because they're a beast of a plant. And if you're doing especially really large tomato, like the actual like beefsteak tomatoes or anything that's a large tomato, the tomato is heavy. And even though tomato stems can get like that in size around, if not bigger, sometimes the tomato is still too heavy, so then they'll droop. So you want tomato cages for tomatoes. You might want to do some sort of support. You're going to want to do support for peas because they're usually a climbing plant. What's interesting about this variety is this variety of peas from Burpee, Sugar Daddy. This is actually resistant to powdery mildew as well as to pea leaf roll virus, which is interesting to know. I just picked it up because it was organic, and I wanted to get some organic stuff down because then, I can harvest the seeds from some of the pods and keep them over if I plant all these, which I probably won't. Then we have some sort of organic veggies in the garden. The bunching onions that I bought are not organic because I couldn't find an organic onion seed packet. Just trying to keep things a little bit friendlier for the digestive system. Sometimes even though you wash your fruit and you wash your vegetables, sometimes there's still pesticide residue. So doing organic is a good way of making sure that there's less of a chance of you getting some sort of pesticide in there. Now, of course, I will have to be careful when Sean goes out to nuke the yard with Roundup that there's no overspray going on, because how disappointing would that be? Because it would kill my plants. I'd be super mad. You gotta be careful, because even if you buy organic seeds, you want to make sure you're buying organic potting mix or organic seed starting mix, which was a mistake that I had made when I first started out. I didn't realize that if they're not necessarily listed on the OMRI listing, companies can't put OMRI on or they're not supposed to put OMRI on their products unless they're actually OMRI certified. I don't remember what OMRI stands for, but it has to do with the actual product being organic, 100% organic. So you can't be you're not supposed to have OMRI written on your thing if you're not OMRI certified. So that's why I decided to try this Jiffy Mix, because it's OMRI it's got OMRI listed on there, which is cool. Those other seeds that I had bought last time, the tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes, the California Wonder bell peppers, and the Hungarian wax peppers, which are supposed to be hot. I meant to get mild ones. Whoops. Those are heirloom, but I do not believe they're organic. So there was some sort of pesticide applied to the plant that those seeds were harvested from. So there could be some residue in the seed. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to add? This was a long video, I'm sorry. But I love plants, and I love to talk about them, and I can't help it. What else do I want to add? I think that's it. I haven't done anything scripted in a really long time. When I first started out, I used to write out scripts, and I used to stick to them rather well. But that was when we had video editing equipment when I was dating somebody that had video editing equipment, which I'm not with that person anymore. I'm with my husband now. So I don't have that equipment. So I can't stop and pause and, do all this thing to look down at my sheet and read what I'm reading. Doesn't mean I didn't research all the stuff that I was talking about, so don't get any ideas there. But, so now these are more free-flowing blog videos, I suppose, of my gardening adventures, which I think is a little bit more organic. It's more natural. It feels good. So, that's pretty much it. if you're interested in seeing the stuff that I do outside of gardening, like my crafting stuff, let me know if that interests you. Because like I said, I make hats, I make scarves, I make mittens. Mittens are a little tricky for me, so they don't look like they don't match. One mitten doesn't look exactly the same as the other mitten, so probably, maybe don't order mittens from me ever. But, you know, I do a lot of crocheting. My artwork, I don't know if I've ever actually posted any of my artwork onto the channel. Probably not, because it's not really gardening content. But if you're interested, drop a comment down below. And if you want to see my Etsy shop and potentially support me, which it's not required. Not required. Even if you just want to look to say, hey, that's cool that you do that too, that's great. Because that gives me a little bit of confidence in myself that I'm not wasting time doing that. Which I don't think I am, because I enjoy it. But I make earrings, bracelets, necklaces. I do some polymer clay stuff. Like I made Christmas charm bracelets that I had sold. I sold a couple of them. And yeah, I'm thinking about gearing up, making some polymer clay plant tags, which would be cool. So I would mold them and then maybe stamp them so that they would say peas or peppers or whatever, instead of doing like typical popsicle sticks. That would be cool. I might make some of those. Those would be neat. Anyways, rambling again. So I want to say thank you for tuning in. If you watched the whole thing, that's great. If you skipped out, that's okay too, because I don't know if I could listen to me for a half an hour, where I see the timer, it's at 32 minutes almost. So if you bailed, that's okay. I don't blame you. If you stayed, that's awesome. If you want, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me some comments, tell me about your journey, tell me about how your seed starting is going, or how your gardening is going, because obviously not everybody is in the area that I'm in, so you might be able to be doing some gardening work if you're in Florida. Sean actually was living in Florida before while I started seeing him, he was living in Florida before he moved out to Wyoming. So, you know, they're able to do a lot more in Florida and in the other states that are farther down south than where I am. So I know Chuck's in one of the Carolinas. He's able to do more outside than what we are up here. You know, Georgia's probably getting pretty warm. I know a couple of friends of ours that are down there. They've been posting 80-degree days. Woo! I'm like, we had one 70-degree day. I was like, 70 degrees! Sweet! So, anyways, let me know what you guys are up to. And, yeah. Follow, subscribe, like. And until next time, stay green, folks.